Hello everyone, Brian here. The weather in Southern California is starting to really cool off now. Our lows in the mornings are in the low 60s, and then for daytime temperatures, we're getting around 80 degrees, and then I think we're going to get a day of 90, but I think after that it'll start to cool off, and then the fall crops will be really happy about that. Fall crops, in particular, broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cauliflower. They're something that I'm trying to grow with marginal success. So I'm trying to plan that better, and hopefully we'll get sizable crowns on the broccoli and cauliflower and sizable Brussels sprouts. But before we get there, we'll have to plant them. Um, some of those plants were started in the starter pots, and they've been transplanted into this raised bed. But unfortunately, it's also possum season, and this is a time of year when the grubs are large enough for them to really enjoy. And they've come by and um, help with taking out the grubs from the raised beds. And for the last 3 nights, they've been coming and coming. So I think they're now kind of disturbing what we're trying to do here. So we're gonna have to see about how to prevent them from getting into the raised planter. Um, they're like I mentioned a few seconds ago. They're good in that they help take the grubs out of the ground, and in our raised bed, they'll take it out for us. And on the lawn, they aerate the soil, so they also do good. Sometimes they are overly helpful. So um, in this case today, they have been. So we'll 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 put a screen over it, and hopefully they won't bother our raised planters anymore. And so today we'll kind of put everything back in its place and put the screen on top. Here we've got our Chinese kale that was sown in a starter pot, and they've been moved around a couple times now. Put this guy back, and hopefully he'll be all right. There's another Chinese kale, and here's another one. These were our Chinese kale succession plantings. Over this way, we had two cauliflower plants. One made it. The other one just kept getting dug up when it came here. So here's the other one. At this point, I don't think we're gonna save it. Over here, we had a line of bok choy, and they've been dug up, moved around. Here's another one. This one, this one hasn't really been moved around too much. So we'll have to redo those. We had a line of mammoth melting sugar snap peas or sugar peas, and they got dug up and moved around. These are French breakfast radishes. There was a whole row sowed, and some of these guys are coming out. Since we're resowing, we'll just hit the reset button, and go about it all over again. Okay, first, we're going to sow the French breakfast radish. This is one that we're going to grow for the first time. I'm going to do a row of them. They need about 12 inches row spacing. So what we're going to do is we're going to plant them next to the Chinese kale or gailan. And the idea is that by the time the radishes get big, these guys will be already plucked out, and they'll get their 12 inches of space. They're planted an inch apart, but they'll need to be thinned out. In the next row, about 6 inches away, we'll plant our bok choy. Bok choy is a fast-growing green, and they should be out of the radish's way. Bok choy is a brassica, so the seeds are going to look like all the brassicas. They're just going to be round and looking like this. So this is your kale, your cauliflower, all the brassicas. I'm going to throw a lot of seeds in this row here. And then we'll thin them out when they sprout. This is a self-blanching cauliflower. It's also a brassica, so the seeds are very similar to the bok choy. They're round. We'll put another cauliflower here, and just throw a bunch of seeds in there and thin out the seeds and pick the best ones, the best one to keep. And over here in this row, we're going to do some more Chinese kale or gailan as a succession planting to the ones that we have currently. And these are spaced about 4 to 5 inches apart. And I'm throwing some seeds in a spot that's 4 to 6 inches apart. We'll thin them out as they get bigger. In our other planter, we have some red cord Chantenay carrots. They're French heirloom carrots, and the possum doesn't come to this planter too often. It's probably because there's not too many grubs for them to snack on. But they did visit a couple times. They didn't do too much damage here. We'll just move some of the dirt back in their place, and today is also a good time to start thinning out the carrots. So we're gonna pick the big carrots. We'll start thinning them out. Even though they're supposed to be spaced apart, probably a good 4 inches at least, we're not going to thin them out just yet to 4 to 6 inches apart. We're going to keep it so that there's maybe a 1/4 of an inch spacing between the two plants. The reason is something could happen to one of these guys, and if you start thinning them out right now, if something happens, then you're going to lose that section of carrots. So let's see here. So like here, for instance, we're going to thin this one out because they're just too close to each other. Okay, before we finish for the day, let's check on our kale plants. Since we don't use pesticides, we deal with pests in a very manual manner, and that's by checking on plants and looking for clues of pests. Like for instance, when you find holes on the leaves, that means there are some caterpillars on there. So you start inspecting for the caterpillars and then for eggs. So here there are a couple of eggs. Come out and just smush them away. There is a caterpillar here that we missed. So let's check on the underside. There are more eggs that we need to smush. So this is our daily routine of coming out and inspecting the leaves and how we grow without using pesticides. Well, I'm gonna finish up inspecting the plants. As always, thanks for coming out and gardening with me. Even though we had to work around nature as far as her trying to help us get rid of grubs, we're appreciative of all the different animals and such that exist that help us keep everything in balance. So we're just working with nature today and kind of letting her know that we can take it from here by setting up these grates. And being out here this morning, we had a hint of de skunk, so maybe it's a skunk that's been visiting us. Well, I guess that's it for today, so until the next video, we'll see you next time, and happy gardening. Here's an update on our seed starts. We have this walking stick kale that needs to be transplanted, and there's a spot for it in the front yard, but I haven't gotten a chance to get it ready. So we may need to transplant this to a bigger pot so they'll be happy. These are some more Chinese kale, succession planted kale. We have some red express cabbage, and 2 of them already been transplanted to the front yard landscape area. There were some cauliflower that was started here, and they got moved to the raised planter, and we saw one of them earlier. These are some dwarf blue kale, and they're ready to be thinned. So we'll thin them out off camera. Here's our red vein sorrel. Another Chinese kale. These are our King Richard leek. So they're sprouting, and we got quite a few. So when they get a little bit bigger, we'll transplant them to the front yard.